All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen Smith. I go by the MapSmith on the internet. And I'm going to talk today about the return of the pen plotter with air quotes on that, or pen craft-ography. Craft because this is definitely more of a craft than an art in my mind. So who am I? I'm the MapSmith. That's my logo. And I consider myself a cross-platform freelance cartographer. So I'm not wedded to any particular platform, medium, or method. I use Esri for my day job. I use Mapbox with my clients, QGIS when I need it, lots of web-based tools. So cartography is an expansive space, and there's lots of tools to use, and I use them all. So what I'm going to talk today about is making imperfect physical maps. So a couple years ago, I started seeing on Twitter these AxiDraw maps people were making. There's this sort of maker kit where you could assemble your own pen plotter using 3D printed parts and a little Raspberry Pi and all that stuff. I thought, okay, this is really cool. I really like it. Why do I like it? And I think that's what I'm going to talk about today, my journey to make imperfect maps. So anyone at home, you could watch the print that's happening since you're not in the room here. So this is a hat tip to Alan McConchy, who I saw in the talk in the past use this big disclaimer. This isn't a thoroughly researched topic, so, but it is just something that I've had fun with and I'd like to share with you, and there may be some puns. So why physical maps? I like, as anyone who works on a computer all day long, it's nice to have something different. It's nice to have it in your hands. It's nice to see the output. It's nice to see how something looks in the real world, different lighting conditions, different pens, different paper. And obviously you could share it in a physical way, you could put it on the wall. So physical maps are great. But in the past, my work has been drop shipping, it's been sending the final product to the client, not ever getting that satisfaction of seeing it myself, and not ever feeling like, okay, I'm gonna shell out money to get an equivalently print for myself. So, having the ability to have cheap maps at my fingertips when I want them and when I'm inspired by something and I want to chase it down, that was a big driving factor. And then on the imperfect side, when we see these old maps, and this was honestly just a random map that came up on David Rumsey, the imperfection of old maps, and I'm not going to say hand-drawn maps, but pre-digital maps, is really charming to me, right? So on the screen here we see the shading for this block is not perfect, and there's this like imperfection of the ink at the edges. Your text isn't perfectly kerned, although it's very beautiful for hand-drawn text. You have some ink that didn't quite draw here. There's a charm to this, like when you see it, and that's what I wanted to see if I could create without the level of effort required to do that by hand or using the old techniques. So I felt obligated to do a little bit of background research, and so from a Computer World article in 1982, I got a little bit of a background on pen plotters, and they mentioned that early physical reproductions of using pens to draw data on paper was these, now they escape my, I don't have my slide notes in front of me here, but like stuff like polygraphs and seismometers that will take a physical feature and draw on the page. That would evolve later into pen plotters, which in the article they say they're dull, but death-defying, because the analysts kept thinking at the time that they're going to be gone any day now, and eventually inkjet printers and large format plotters did do away with them. But for a while, this was like the standard. And I'm sure that many people in the room have experience with that. So what I ended up with was not an AxiDraw, which spurred my interest, but I found this tool, which is a crafting tool aimed squarely at like the Martha Stewart space, where you have both you have a print head that carries both a pen and a cutter, which is really nice. So you could cut out and you could frame your map really nicely, get it the right size. So through this process, I learned that map production using these tools was very different than map production using other methods. And in the first place I found that was that it's really heavy on the graphic design more than on the data and the cartography in traditional GIS software. So, when you're using a digital system and even digital printing, vertices and segments, they're all really cheap because your computer just renders them and you've got your final output. but every vertice in your data at the end is going to be a movement of the pen. It's going to slow things down. It's going to make things muddy if you've got a thicker pen. Same thing with segments. You could see here that the output from GIS, I did a multi-ring buffer off of the lake outline, and you could see it draws both lines, and then here on the next one inside, it also draws both lines. So this inner one is going to be duplicated. So there's a lot of graphic design work that had to go into, this is the same thing, but not rendered correctly, where I manually separated each of the curves so that there's just one line per each one. So when it draws, the pen only goes over that area once. And for styling, it's also very different because you really need to be simple if you're going to be swapping pens, and if you don't want it to take forever, every layer is going to end up with a pen. So that's a bit of the graphic design workflow. You can see a screenshot of that there. This pipeline for making this, so getting from an idea in my head through the data, the design, and the exporting, like that's all the usual stuff, right? But when you need to get onto the page, there's a design process as well, which is a little bit onerous, like I just showed you when I separated the vector lines. But there's also additional processing. So you can see here, this is the cloud-based software that runs this device. And you can see this is every contour in the data. And when it comes into the program, they expect you to cut with vector data. So I have to change each of these layers to be drawn. And if I have multiple colors, I have to change the pen. And then I have to remember which pen I chose for which color on the final output if I'm using multiple colors. So there's a bit more work once you're done with the map. And then the printing can be some perilous as well. I had to get some Scotch tape because my mat lost its stickiness. If you've tuned into some of my unsuccessful periscopes in the past, the paper can get caught, the cutter can not cut all the way through, there could be misalignments. So you get a lot more work to get to this output, which can be challenging and rewarding too. And then if you start following people that use pen plotters, especially the people that do generative art on the internet, there's some really awesome people out there. I've just pulled up a couple examples. Paul Butler does AxiDraw generative art, and he uses like Touch Designer, which I haven't been able to explore, but I feel like it's an advanced graphics program. Here's Inconvergent, who does algorithmic generative art. It's really beautiful, and he puts out one of these like every day. And David Braun here, this is the Touch Designer one. So he took this pattern and he used 3D programs to make it look offset. So there's some other awesome people out there using pen plotting, which is really exciting. So just showing a couple results here. This was the example from before with the contours. This was the quantitative precipitation forecast from the National Weather Service the day Harvey made landfall. It's the 7-day cumulative forecast. So these are the contours for the rain. You can sort of guess where Texas was. And then other ones I like doing different projections, using natural earth data for lots of this, and also project line work. I got to give a hat tip there. This is the one that just printed, State of Vermont typography, and there's my map pun, my very first print, using project line work as well, their hexagonal map. So let's see what the result was here. Came out faster than I expected. So the way this works is it sticks to the board, and I've got an aftermarket adapter for the printing, for using Sharpies, and it went very fast, and it didn't break, which is awesome. So I've been using a consistent hashtag. If you want to see all of my pen plots, watch the little videos. One of them was late at night, and it ripped, and I may have cursed, so they're not all, and they're not all perfect too. I brought some examples. Registration errors where my 2 layers didn't show up correctly. I wanted to hatch inside of the river polygon. And then sometimes the pen just loses contact or it loses its draw. So there's a lot of fun and interesting challenges that go along with this. But it's been a really exciting thing. I've got more examples up here. I've also got stickers if anyone is interested, and to talk more about the plotter afterwards. Any questions?
Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah.
I'm really curious what the possibilities are for scaling this up to like poster size maps.
So with this device, the largest size is 12 by 24. The AxiDraw is around 12 by 12 is the area. People have attached pen attachments to CNC machines, and those can get pretty big, but you're talking very expensive devices at that point. And obviously in the past, they used to do like D-size sheets. I found out that in the 1980s, those were up to $16,000. So whatever, and I don't think there's any professional grade large format pen plotters these days, but you may find them at a thrift shop or something. A very odd, specific thrift shop. Any other questions?
Anything else? We have loads of time. That was a very efficient talk.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we could do another print. What do you think? Or we can just get on with it. Oh, here we go.
Were you saying something about a cutting function that has? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it just has two heads on there, and so what I could do is if I wanted to, let's see if I could isolate which one of these is the outer polygon, I could mark any of these to cut. And so after, so this polygon would cut out after the fact. So it figures out your order for the printing. So those people on Etsy who sell those cut out maps, they may just be using something like this. Not an X-Acto knife. So it's 3-axis. The mat moves back and forth, and then the head moves left and right, and then so in the combination of moving the axes, it could do curved lines. I think it's just like a straight point. It's a small straight point. Andy over here.
I noticed most of these are, like the examples you showed, they're just like one color of pen. Has anybody or yourself gotten into like multicolor, and how painful is that? Because I can see it being very difficult.
Yeah, it can be challenging, and especially since, let's see, here's the tube map one. So, you know, you're switching every couple of minutes. So this one, you see me here, switching the pen, trying to get it lined up just right. So this is an aftermarket adapter, so it doesn't fit perfectly. So this is a tube map, and I tried to, oh, it looks like my pen didn't put down. I didn't put down the pen at the right depth. But I had this color-coded for each tube line in the London Underground. So, you know, it doesn't always go right. And I talked to my cartographer friends who were around back then, and like ink wells going dry, spilling, and switching heads, and there's all sorts of issues with it. So inkjet and laser rightly supplanted this, but it's still kind of fun when it works. The stream of a stream. All right.
Anything else? Okay, thanks a lot, Stephen.
Thanks.